rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We all have our reasons why we are on this track. Oh, we all have our burdens, yeah, but we just keep on fighting and we never look back. Here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. When you feel it's hopeless, when you think that you lost, oh, I will take your hand and we'll rise up from the dust. Oh, here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We all have our reasons why we are on this track. Oh, we all have our burdens, yeah, but we just keep on fighting and we never look back. Here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing. Standing up, everybody's gonna see it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. Even if we fall, we will rise up and we follow the path that we believe in. No, we're not gonna stop until we reach it. Oh, all you need to know is that we're holding on. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne. We rise up from the dust and claim our throne.
Sorry about the long start there. Had a bit of trouble with my audio again. But anyway, here we are. We got it going. Everything's cool. Do a couple more chapters from Annihilation tonight. So we're on to, make sure I got my, 12 and 13. All right, here goes. Chapter 12. Theron had no intention of showing up late for his briefing with the Supreme Commander. The director was already furious with him for slipping his name into the summary report for Operation Endgame. No sense adding fuel to the fire. As a result, he arrived at Jace's office 20 minutes early. Take a seat, the receptionist instructed, pointing to one of several chairs against the wall. The Supreme Commander will see you once everyone is here. There was nothing in her tone to indicate that this was anything but standard protocol, but Theron couldn't help but wonder if the director had given explicit instructions not to let him in to speak with Jace Malcolm unescorted. However, looking at the young woman's bearing, professional but in no way wary or guarded, convinced him he was just being paranoid. He smiled to himself as he sat down, glad to see his survival skills were operating at full throttle once again. For a field agent, a little paranoia was a good thing. Sometimes they really were out to get you. The director arrived about 15 minutes later. He gave a perfunctory nod to Theron, then a warm smile and wink to the receptionist. The young woman blushed and smiled herself as she pretended not to have seen the gesture. Looks like the director's looking for wife number 3, Theron thought to himself. Any advice for this meeting? Theron asked quietly, as his boss took a seat beside him to wait. Since when does anything I ever tell you matter? He replied in a sharp whisper, just low enough to keep the receptionist from hearing. You just do whatever you want anyway. But I get results, Theron reminded him. That's why you keep me around. The director didn't reply, and Theron could tell he was biting his tongue to keep from unleashing a full-blown rant in front of the receptionist. Jace is a military man, the director finally said after regaining his composure. He likes discipline and order. Pull one of your typical reckless stunts while he's calling the shots and he'll crush you. I'll keep that in mind, Theron promised. They passed the next few minutes in uncomfortable silence until Master Nostral, their Jedi liaison, arrived. The Keldor was slightly taller than Theron, though he appeared thinner, possibly because of his loose-fitting Jedi robe. His rough, ridged skin was a faded hue of yellow-brown. Like all Keldor who ventured from the helium-rich atmosphere of their homeworld, his eyes were protected by form-fitting goggles, and the lower half of his face was partially obscured by a steel-breathing mask. The mask covered the fleshy chasm that Keldor possessed in place of a nose and mouth, though it left his 10-centimeter long, downward protruding tusks exposed. Given his complexion, the mask, the tusks, and the odd-shaped cranium typical of the species, Master Nostral's appearance was intimidating and unsettling, but Theron knew the Jedi was one of the most respected and honored masters in the Order. He was the Republic's foremost expert on the Sith. He had studied them in detail for many years in his role as keeper of the Jedi archives. Having reviewed the file the Jedi sent over, however, Theron knew he was more than a mere historian. Nostral was also an accomplished warrior. He'd been battling with Sith ever since their startling reemergence on the galactic stage, longer than Theron had even been alive. Theron wondered what the Keldor thought of Grand Master Satil Shan, though there were no records of them serving directly together. He surely knew the head of the Jedi Order personally. He also wondered if Nostral knew Satil was his mother. Not that Theron really cared either way. Satil's connection to him was purely biological. His lineage had no bearing on who he was or what he had become. The only real parent he'd had was Master Zhou. Greetings, Director, the alien said, his voice deep and resonant even through his mask. And to you, Agent Shan. Call me Theron. As you wish. I knew Master Zhou. He spoke of you often. I grieved when I heard of his loss, though I take solace knowing he became one with the Force. Theron was familiar enough with Jedi philosophy not to take offense at the well-intentioned words. He also made note of the fact that Nostaral mentioned Zhou but not Satele, though he might just have been exercising discretion. The Supreme Commander will see you now, the young woman said, pressing a button behind her desk that caused the door to swing open. The three men rose as one and entered the room where Jace was waiting. The Supreme Commander sprang to his feet as they entered, coming over quickly to close the door behind them. Director, Master Nostaral, he said, nodding at each of them in turn. Good to finally meet you, Theron. His words came quickly as if he was nervous. Theron chalked it up to excitement over the mission. Oh, shit, we're in an ad, and I didn't even realize it. I don't know when it started. Crap. Here I was just blathering on, reading. So we'll wait until the ad ends. Sorry about that. I'll just go back up to the beginning of that paragraph, though. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Okay, so it says we're back, but you're not back. That's weird. Okay. Now it says we're back. All right. So I'm just going to go from um, director, Master Nostaral, he said, nodding at each of them in turn. Good to finally meet you, Theron. His words came quickly as if he was nervous. Theron chalked it up to excitement over the mission. I want everyone to speak freely, Malcolm continued. Rank means nothing here. We're all equals in this meeting. If you have something to say, just say it. Think you can handle that, Theron? The director said sarcastically. I'll try to get over my natural shyness. Perhaps we should bring each other up to speed, Master Nostaral suggested. You can tell me more about Operation Endgame, and I can tell you about the Ascendant Spear's commander. She was once my Padawan, though she went by the name of Kana Terid back then. I helped put together the analytics report, Theron reminded them. I've studied everything that was in the files in detail. I'm more interested in what wasn't in the files. The Jedi nodded. Kana showed great promise during her training, though I was always wary of her ambition. She rarely limited herself to the tasks I set her to. She liked to go off on her own, take risks, always looking for the next new challenge. Sounds familiar, the director mumbled, but Theron ignored him. Instead of trying to change her nature, I sought to guide and direct her natural curiosity. I encouraged her to explore and branch out. That doesn't sound familiar, Theron interjected, arching an eyebrow in his boss's direction. It may be my fault that she fell to the dark side, Nostaral admitted. I thought her training had given her the discipline to keep her safe, but perhaps giving her so much freedom was a mistake. Theron chimed in before the director could say anything. Some people are just drawn to the dark side. Forcing her to follow a rigid set of rules might have made her abandon the Jedi Order even sooner. She didn't abandon the Jedi Order, Nostaral replied. Not as you think. I wanted to get one of my people into the Sith, someone to help bring them down from the inside. I was the one who sent her to study under Darth Malgus. I knew it was a risk. If she was discovered, she would suffer untold tortures and a gruesome, painful death. Even worse, I knew the temptation of the dark side would test her. Malgus was both powerful and charismatic. Theron wasn't entirely sure the risk of falling to the dark side was worse than torture and death, but he managed to keep his mouth shut. For several years she worked undercover, studying at Malgus's feet, while secretly relaying information back to me. Much of what we know about the Ascendant Spear came from her initial reports, and her information led to several key Republic victories. Let me guess what happened next, Theron said. The intel kept flowing, but it became less valuable. The information was still accurate, but it wasn't as strategically important. She became a double agent, the Keldor confirmed. She was feeding us insignificant scraps on the Empire's plans while relaying critical Republic intel to Darth Malgus. Before she abandoned us, she learned that the ship's full potential can only be unlocked by those with a powerful connection to the Force, the Jedi added. But it also requires special cybernetic implants to interface with the control systems. It is this union of ship and Sith that makes the spear such a formidable weapon. I believe Malgus convinced my Padawan to submit to the surgery for the cybernetic implants so she could take command of the vessel. That was likely the final temptation that lured her over to the dark side. The Keldor's insistence on finding some identifiable reason for Karad's betrayal didn't sit well with Theron. The Keldor's insistence on I just read that. You're not going on this mission to try to redeem your former Padawan, are you? He asked. I know you Jedi believe nobody is beyond redemption, but bringing down the spear is going to be hard enough already. My actions unleashed Darth Karad on the galaxy, Nostaral explained. It is my responsibility to stop her. That is my only concern. Theron nodded. Taking care of unfinished business was something he could understand. In any event, Kana changed her name to Darth Karad, and I haven't had any contact with her since, Nostaral concluded. Everything I know about her now comes to me from other sources, like SIS. We've just learned that Darth Karad has recently been given a seat on the Darth Council, the director chimed in. This doesn't change anything, Jace insisted. It just means taking Karad and the spear down will have an even greater impact on the Empire. That's why Operation Endgame is so important. After reviewing all the scenarios analytics offered, we realize we can't stop the spear unless we first get a saboteur on board, the Supreme Commander told Nostaral. The plan is to have Theron stow away on the ship while it's docked at an Imperial spaceport for crew leave. The spear never stays in port for long, Theron added. Getting a saboteur on board requires preparation and planning. We'd have to know which spaceport Karad was heading for so we could get there first to set everything up. We do have a mole inside Imperial Fleet Communications, the director said, and she can divert copies of any messages being transmitted to or from the Ascendant Spear to us. But those messages are coded. Then it won't do us any good, Theron nodded, unless we have a black cipher. Hasn't acquiring a black cipher been a Republic priority for months? Nostaral asked, impressing Theron with his knowledge of something that didn't fall under the Order's typical purview. The Empire has taken every precaution to keep that from happening, Jace replied. On 2 occasions, we even salvaged a damaged cipher from the wreckage of an Imperial capital ship in the hope of repairing or reverse engineering it. Unfortunately, the ciphers are designed with a self-destruct function. When a capital ship goes down, the ciphers automatically burn out their decryption cores. Without a functional core, the cipher is just a worthless metal box. So how do you propose we acquire one? Asked Theron. The Imperial Minister of Logistics uses one to communicate with capital ships across the galaxy, the director explained. It's in his office at the Orbital Defense Command Center on Ziost. So we need to break into one of the most heavily guarded buildings on one of the Empire's most critical and well-defended worlds and steal the cipher without setting off the self-destruct sequence, the Jedi asked, making sure he was clear on the plan. It's more complicated than that, Theron said. If a working cipher goes missing, the Empire will just reprogram all their codes. Theron knew it wasn't as simple as he was making it sound. The black ciphers had been designed to prevent anyone from tampering with them. They couldn't be reprogrammed in the field. Changing the encryption codes would require the Empire to recall their capital ships so technicians could synchronize the changes on each vessel. It would be costly and time-consuming, but it was still a better option than letting the enemy listen in on their classified transmissions. But the Empire won't go to the trouble and expense of changing the codes if they don't think the cipher is missing, the director explained. We need to break into the minister's office and swap the working cipher's core with one of the burned out cores from the damaged ciphers we recovered. Make them think the one in the minister's office was somehow damaged, causing it to set off the self-destruct sequence. Won't they be suspicious if the cipher is mysteriously damaged? The Jedi asked. Not if they think it was damaged in a terrorist attack, Theron chimed in. Plenty of Imperial installations on other worlds have been targeted in the past. We switch the cores, then detonate some explosives inside the building, make it look like local anti-Imperial separatists set off a blast that triggered the cipher's self-destruct sequence. Could be heavy civilian casualties if we aren't careful, the Jedi noted. We'll do everything we can to minimize collateral damage, Jace promised. We'll need the architectural blueprints for the Orbital Defense Command Center, Nosteral added, along with a list of all their security protocols. Does SIS have a contact on Ziost we can use? We haven't been able to make any inroads into Ziost yet, the director admitted. I know someone who can help, Theron said. A freelancer I worked with before. The hard part is going to be convincing her to work with me again, he says to himself. Even if Theron's friend helps us out, the director cautioned, we're still working on a good cover story to get onto Ziost without drawing attention. I can take care of that, Nosteral offered. Theron raised an eyebrow in surprise. SIS aren't the only ones who need to infiltrate Imperial worlds, the Keldor explained. Then it's settled, Theron said. So when do we leave? He knew they could keep going over the mission backward and forward, hashing out every last detail, but he didn't see the point. Part of what made him a good agent was the ability to think on his feet. Any specifics they came up with now would be pure speculation. It was inevitable things would change during the actual mission, and over-planning would only make it harder to adapt and improvise. Give me time to get our cover story in place, Nosteral said. We can meet at my private hangar in 2 days. I'll send you the location. I'm glad you're both eager to start, Jace said, but let's not rush into anything. You wanted Theron on this op, Marcus said, coming to his agent's defense. I've learned that when he's ready to go, the best thing is to just get out of his way. I can do that, Jace vowed. Gentlemen, Operation Endgame has officially begun. May luck and the Force be with you. Realizing they had been dismissed, Theron, the director, and Nosteral filed out of the Supreme Commander's office and into the reception area outside. You two go on ahead, the director told them, casting a quick glance over at the receptionist as the office door closed behind them. I need to speak with this young lady about some paperwork. Coordinating SIS resources with the military. Got to make everything official. Theron suspected that whatever the director wanted to talk about was decidedly unofficial, but he had enough tact not to say anything as he and Nosteral continued out into the hall alone. I'm looking forward to working with you, the Jedi said, once they reached a branch in the hall where they would part ways, and I can assure you that my feelings for my former Padawan won't interfere with our mission. That's good to know, Theron said, thinking, if it comes down to it, will you be able to kill her, or will you hesitate? I'll see you in 2 days, Nosteral said, then turned and headed off in the other direction. As he watched him go, the personal holocom on Theron's belt started to beep. Curious, he answered the call. To his surprise, the Supreme Commander's face materialized before him. Theron, I'd like to speak to you again before the mission, alone, at my private residence. Of course, sir, Theron said, too taken aback to think of anything else. Good. I'll send you the address. Be there tomorrow night. The call ended before Theron could ask any questions, leaving him wondering what the Supreme Commander of the Republic could possibly want to discuss. And that's the end of that chapter, so we'll just dive right on into the next one. Chapter 13. Jace Malcolm shifted his position, unable to get comfortable on the couch in the living room of his modestly furnished apartment as he waited for Theron to arrive. The Supreme Commander wasn't normally so restless. During his military career, he'd spent many hours just sitting and waiting. A soldier's life was long stretches of boredom broken up by brief interludes of intense action. He'd learned long ago how to stay calm and relaxed as the minutes ticked by, but this situation was unlike anything he'd ever dealt with before. When the buzzer at his door rang, he actually sprang to his feet and paused a moment to collect himself before opening the door. "Thanks for coming, Theron," he said to the young man on the other side. "I'm not going to miss a meeting with the Supreme Commander," Theron replied. "This wasn't an order," Jace assured him, "just a request. Coming from someone in your position, they're basically the same thing." Jace nodded. He had been an officer in command of others for many years, but his recent promotion to Supreme Commander had taken things to a level he still wasn't quite used to. "Come in and sit down," he said. "Please," he added, hoping to make it seem like an invitation. Theron settled into one of the two chairs across from the couch. Jace couldn't help but notice his choice of seat, facing the door, and the farthest position away from where anyone else could sit. "Nice place you have here, Commander. Kind of expected the walls to be covered with all your medals and commendations." "They clashed with the drapes," Jace explained. "Can I get you something to drink? I've got a nice Alderanian vintage if you like wine, or Corellian Reserve if you prefer brandy." "No thanks, sir. How about some Mandalorian Kriegi?" "Always wanted to try the hard stuff," Theron said. "Sure, I'll take a glass." Jace made his way over to the liquor cabinet in the corner and poured them both a shot, then brought it over to his guest before taking a seat on the couch facing him. In the light of the apartment, he could see that Theron favored his mother's side. He could make out a few faint hints of Satil Shan in the younger man's features, though if he didn't know who his mother was, it wouldn't have been noticeable. "To the Republic?" Theron asked. Or to the Republic?" Theron asked, holding up his glass. "The Republic," Jace agreed, and they both downed their drinks in a single gulp. Theron coughed and sputtered for a few seconds, a common reaction to those tasting Kriegi for the first time. "Want another?" Jace asked. "It'll grow on you." "I'm good," Theron gasped, his face still red from choking on the first glass. They set their empty glasses on the coffee table between them, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Jace knew Theron was waiting for him to speak, but he honestly didn't know where to begin. "I served with your mother," he finally said, "on Alderaan. She was a remarkable woman." He could see a change come over Theron's face. He was suddenly guarded and wary. "I figured you knew," he said. "Is that why you picked me for this mission?" "I've seen your service record, Theron. You've earned this." "You didn't answer my question." "I wondered if there was some of your mother in you," Jace admitted. "I don't mean to be rude, Commander, but if you brought me here to ask about Satil, you're out of luck. I barely know her." There was a shortness to Theron's reply. It wasn't exactly anger or bitterness, more like exasperation, as if he'd had or imagined this conversation so many times before that he was simply tired of it. "So you've never reached out to her, or she to you?" Theron shrugged. "Never saw any reason. When I was born, she gave me up to dedicate herself to the Republic. I understand why she did it, and I respect her choice. I chose to serve the Republic too. That's why I joined SIS. Making her part of my life now would just complicate things for both of us, make both of our jobs harder. I don't see the point." "You seem pretty sure of this," Jace noted. "Nagani Zhou helped me understand why Satil did what she did. I've come to terms with it. I've moved on." "But what about your father? Didn't you ever want to ask Satil about him?" "Master Zhou was my father. He raised me, made me who I am." The conversation wasn't going as well as Jace had hoped. He was dancing around the real issue, and he realized he was actually afraid. He'd faced death too many times to count, but here he was, too scared to tell Theron why he was really here. Taking a deep breath, the Supreme Commander decided it was time to charge into the breach. "Theron, I didn't know Satil had a son. I only found out a few days ago when I saw your name in the report, and I asked the director if you were related." "Kind of wish he'd lied to you," Theron grumbled. "Could have avoided this whole awkward chat." Jace ignored him and pressed on, determined to get the truth out there. "He gave me your personnel file. I checked when you were born, confirming what I already suspected. Theron, I believe that I am your father." I knew that was coming. There was a long silence before Theron finally spoke. I already told you, he said coldly. Master Zhou was my father. Theron, you have to believe that I had no idea. When Satil broke off our relationship, I thought it was because of the Jedi Order's ban against emotional attachments. I didn't realize she was pregnant. Theron stood up suddenly. Commander, I'm sorry she lied to you, but this is between you and her. You need to talk to Satil. That's the last thing I need right now, Jace replied. She lied to me, hid you from me. I'm so mad I wouldn't even know what to say to her. But she'd know what to say to you, Theron said sympathetically. The Jedi always have an explanation. Exactly. I'm in no mood to hear her prattle on about peace and controlling your emotions. That's why I came to you. I still don't know what you want from me, Theron said, shaking his head. Why tell me this? Why? Jace rose to his feet. You're my son. Doesn't that mean anything to you? No, Theron snapped, taking a step back. We're just strangers who happen to share a biological connection. That's my point, Jace insisted, resisting the urge to take a step forward. We don't have to be strangers. I don't need someone to take me fishing or teach me how to ride a hoverbike. That's not what I meant, Jace said, shaking his head in frustration. I just want to get to know you better. Maybe we have more in common than you think. Theron sighed and brought a hand up to rub his temples. Your timing on this is really terrible, Commander, he said. I could have handled this better, Jace admitted. I just thought you had a right to know. I'm still trying to figure this all out. Fair enough, Theron said, his tone softening. I've been dealing with Satil's decision my whole life, but you just found out. I guess it's going to take you some time to get a handle on it. Jace stayed silent, sensing that Theron was heading somewhere. I have a lot of respect and admiration for you and what you do, Theron told him. And maybe we do have a lot in common. We've both dedicated our lives to helping the Republic. Maybe when I get back from Ziost, we can try to get to know each other better. Don't worry, Jace assured him. We can take it slow. If we were taking it slow, you wouldn't have dropped this bomb on our first visit. Sorry about that, Jace said. I thought you deserved to know before the mission, just in case. The professional soldier in him realized how poorly he had handled the whole situation, though there wasn't much he could do about it now. You and Master Nostoral are scheduled to leave tomorrow. Do you need me to postpone the mission for a few days while you process this? Give me a little credit, Commander, Theron replied. I'm more worried about you. Knowing I'm your son might affect your judgment on Operation Endgame. You don't get to be the Supreme Commander unless you can put personal feelings aside for the greater good of the Republic, Jace replied. Glad to hear it. There was another long, uncomfortable silence before Theron finally said, I should go. I still have some things to get ready before I leave. Right, of course. Jace escorted Theron to the door. Just before he left, the young man turned to him. We can talk again when I get back. Looking forward to it, Jace answered with a smile. The door slid closed, and Jace slowly made his way back over to collapse onto the couch. His heart was pounding, and his body felt simultaneously wired and exhausted, the same reaction he had at the end of an intense battle. He closed his eyes to take a short nap and slipped immediately off to sleep, a useful skill most soldiers quickly learned. Okay, he must be dreaming here. Jace lay motionless with his eyes closed on his cot as consciousness slowly returned. Floating on a cloud of colto, he could hear the celebration taking place outside his tent. Havoc Squad had won a great victory today over the Empire. The Republic had been giving ground ever since the Sith had first reappeared and seized Korriban. Reclaiming Alderaan was a moral boost the troops desperately needed. The songs and laughter of the soldiers from outside the tent sounded as if they were coming from a great distance, muted by the drugs that numbed the pain of his disfigured face. The explosion from the grenade he'd clutched in his hand while tackling Darth Malgus had scarred him for life, but his desperate actions had saved Satil Shan's life, just as her unexpected arrival had saved him from execution at the hands of the Sith earlier in the battle. How are you feeling? A gentle voice cooed in his ear, and he opened his eyes to see Satil hovering over him. Muddled, Jace said with a smile. Kolto's making me a bit woozy. He could feel his burned skin stretching and cracking at the gesture, and he half expected Satil to recoil as he realized what a gruesome sight he must be. Instead, she returned his smile and reached out to place a soft hand on his bare arm. Her touch sent a shiver along his spine. "What are you doing here?" he asked her. "On Alderaan, I mean." "I had a vision," she told him. "The Force showed me that you would need my help on Alderaan, and I petitioned the Council to send reinforcements." "Might have to rethink my opinion on that mystical mumbo-jumbo," Jace teased her. "Those imps were about to make me a full head shorter before you arrived. Guess I owe you one." "After all the battles we've fought together, I've stopped keeping track of who owes whom," Satil told him. "You know I'll always be there for you, and I know you'll be there for me." "We make a good team," Jace conceded. "They find Malgus's body yet?" Satil shook her head. "I'm starting to think he survived the battle." "You dropped a mountain on him," Jace grunted in disbelief. "How could anyone survive that?" "He's a powerful Sith Lord. It's possible he used the dark side to survive my final assault. But you should not let that distract you from this moment. All of Alderaan is hailing you as a hero this night. If you are up to it, I can take you out to enjoy the celebrations." "I'd rather stay here in my tent alone with you." Satil tried to dismiss his comment with a laugh, but there was a nervousness in her reaction that Jace could sense even through the fading fugue of the painkillers in his system. "I'm serious, Satil," he said. "You know how I feel about you. I've felt that way for years, ever since we first met." "That's the Kalto talking," she said, although she sounded unsure. "The Kalto's just giving me the courage to say what I've felt this entire time," Jace insisted, sitting up and clasping her hand between his. "Or maybe it's knowing I was only seconds away from death. Whatever the reason, I can't keep playing this game." "I can't ignore what's in my heart," he continued, the words coming in a rush, his mind suddenly focused and clear. "And I know you feel something for me, too." Satil shook her head, but she didn't pull her hand away. "I am a Jedi. We must unburden ourselves from emotion and passion to find peace." "What peace can you find when the galaxy is consumed by war?" Jace asked. "Instead of denying what we feel, we should embrace it. Together we are greater than each of us alone. You can't deny it." "I'm a Jedi," she repeated, though Jace could tell her resolve was weakening. "There have been Jedi who fell in love," he said. "The Order pretends it never happens, but we both know that isn't true." Satil was silent for several moments. When she spoke, her voice was little more than a whisper. "I've feared this moment since we first met," she told him. She leaned in and gave Jace a gentle kiss on the lips, perhaps careful not to brush the exposed and tender flesh of his wounds. Jace woke with a start, nearly spilling himself off his couch. He hadn't dreamed about Satil for years. He'd thought the memories and the pain they brought him had been boxed safely away. Speaking with Theron, speaking with his son, had reopened old wounds. Checking his watch, he saw nearly 2 hours had passed since Theron had left. That would explain the crick in his neck. The couch was fine for a brief power nap, but it was no place to spend the night. Grunting like a man decades older, he forced himself to his feet and staggered off to bed, wondering if his nights would now be haunted by the only woman he had ever loved. Back in his apartment, Theron couldn't stop pacing. The conversation with Jace, with your father, had affected him more than he wanted to admit. Logically, everything he'd said to Jace was true. Nagani Zhou had raised him, and the only real connection he had with the Supreme Commander was some shared DNA. Emotionally, however, he couldn't simply brush the revelation off. It rekindled long-forgotten feelings of anger and betrayal toward his mother, feelings he thought he'd come to terms with long ago, but when it came to Jace, he wasn't sure what he felt. He wasn't angry. It wasn't fair to blame the Supreme Commander for what Satil had done. He wasn't feeling happy or excited or relieved. He'd never felt the need to know his biological father before, so it wasn't like some great void in his life had suddenly been filled. Yet, even though he couldn't describe it, he was feeling something. You're not going to figure this out in one night, he told himself. Theron stopped pacing and shook his head, trying to regain his focus. Operation Endgame had to be his top priority. He couldn't afford to be distracted by this unexpected family drama. He had to put all thoughts of his parents aside and concentrate on the mission. He took a few deep breaths to regain his composure, a simple trick he'd learned from Nagani Zhou. You're real, father, he said again to himself again. Um, Ignoring the voice inside his head, he made his way over to the holo terminal in the center of the room. He'd set up his apartment so that all incoming holo calls were automatically tracked and traced. He pulled up the data from his last call, Tethys, and sent off a hailing signal, not bothering to hide the identity tag on the transmission. If she's dead set on not talking to me, she'll just ignore the call. The holo beeped several times before Tethys finally answered. Told you to leave us alone, she snarled as her image materialized before him. You didn't have to pick up. Beeping holo's annoying. What you want? I need a favor. Theron half expected her to cut the call short right there. Instead, she gave an exasperated sigh. Knew you were following us for a reason. It's a small favor, Theron assured her. Just need you to make one call. To who? She asked, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. Theron took it as a good sign that she hadn't said no. I have some business on Ziost. I need a contact there who can hold on to an important package for a few days until I come to pick it up. Might also need him to get me a few things. Blueprints, information, maybe some explosives. You know anyone like that? Thought you said you weren't following us on Ziost, she said, her tone dripping with accusation. Theron held up his hands defensively. Never set foot on that planet in my life. I only know you were there because you mentioned it on our last call. Tethys' head tails twitched as she debated whether to believe him or not. What this about? She finally demanded. Can't say, Theron replied. Top secret. But it won't cause any problems for you or the old Tyon Brotherhood. Cause problems for the Empire? Theron shrugged. Does that really matter to you? Got a contact who works with the ZLF, Tethys said. Maybe could do it. Theron had read several reports focusing on the Ziost Liberation Front, a radical separatist group that had vowed to free their homeworld from imperial control. Relying primarily on violent guerrilla attacks, they targeted both military and civilian targets, making them technically a terrorist organization. The ZLF was too extreme for the Republic to officially support them, but for this mission they were exactly what he needed. And you won't have to worry about any of them being sympathetic to the Empire. That should work, Theron said. Can you set up a meeting? Never said we'd help you yet, Tethys reminded him. Got to work out the terms. 200 credits, Theron opened. 1,000, she countered. I'm not giving you 1,000 credits just to set up a meeting, Theron said with a laugh. 300. Take it or leave it. Tethys chewed her lip for a minute as she considered the offer. 400, she said, in advance, and this makes us even for Narshada. Before Theron could agree, she quickly added, We set this up and you leave us alone from now on. We see you following us again, we kill you. Figured that would be part of the deal, he said. 400 credits in advance, and you'll never see me again. Satisfied, Tethys said, Okay, we set it up. And that is the end of that chapter. So that'll be it for reading tonight. Let's see if there's anybody around that I want to raid. Not really seeing anybody. A whole lot of people on tonight, but Count BB is playing Fallout again. Which Fallout 4, which I don't think I've ever seen him play anything else, to be honest. Hot Dog Raw Dog is playing Metal Gear Solid 5. Vesper's on. There we go. Yeah, I'll go hit up Vesper. So bear with me a minute while I get us on over there.
wonder where I might find some peace of mind. Not lights like I've had, but more sophisticated into